All right, why would it matter that they had two Mercedes Benzes in their driveway? First off, again, some people, they're vehicle poor. They're into their vehicle and they could have a modest home with a Mercedes Benz or two. Generally not. It doesn't mean you're definitely a criminal, but combined with stalking a federal agent and having two Mercedes Benzes in an average home, that would or could signify narcotics trafficking, fraudster, embezzler, uh, sex trafficker, whatever it is. Or somebody working for the Soviet Union, which came up in this thing. Even if you're a cop or something like that. You have to understand the time period also. We were at the ground floor of a certain type of law enforcement operation. It's been in the news, so I'm not leaking anything. It's been in court documents. The DEA discovered that same thing. That's most likely where I got it from, actually. So they opened up a car dealership and started selling Mercedes Benzes. And would look at whoever was buying. And then that's where some of our larger narcotics investigations came from. Agent, what was it? An Agent Sheehy. What was that guy's name? Was it Sheehy? He's probably. Yeah, I'm going to look it up. I don't even remember. I think he was FBI. I think Sheehy was FBI. FBI used it too, I think. Sometimes I think the DEA would discover it and then send it to FBI for some reason. And it could be just the caseload for DEA was too large. Again, this is the height of or just after the height of the crack explosion. I'd say at the point that this was happening, that the operation that I was engaged in, and it was, again, me, I didn't know if anybody I could trust even in Baltimore. Well, people just, as I had no idea what Jim was talking about, Jim Spicer, but he said they're just not courageous. I'm like, what's he mean? A judge may not be courageous. An inspector general may not be courageous. But again, I understood it. I just didn't understand it the way he was explaining it, because I hadn't fully woke up yet. So Jim Spicer knew what was going on. So again, other things, an unkept lawn. A lot of these, like, what's that guy's name? The Unabomber types, they have unkept lawns and things like that because they've lost focus on life. Maybe we're operated to it. Again, that's the other side of it. Is this person being psychologically operated to do this to me? And that was before that, I think. It was before 9/11. But it was at the height of that type of investigation. Or actually the height of both types of investigations. That's one of the reasons it happened. It's because people were being busted for being corrupt in government. That were deep state. Again, they don't care if Joe Schmo, the fall guy. I believe they tried to make me the fall guy for something in Baltimore. I don't have that information, but it kind of has that. But they, as far as Jonathan Luna's murder, they maybe were trying to do that, but there's nothing there. I was fine. The weird part is God positioned me to not be not be brought into question. But they did something where I had to go live with a CEO, or not CEO, CEO. Was he a CEO? It was a CSO. which could say, oh, but this person was available to do it, which I think maybe they tried. Right. But again, I was being investigated at the time. My whereabouts were absolutely known. In fact, the person, looking back, I didn't know then. And again, even if I knew then, they were isolating me. They were doing like a CIA prisoner of war type thing. So the person I was speaking to that night, right, right before it happened, I actually went to bed. I went to sleep earlier than I normally would, or I would have still been online. I think I went to sleep around 10 or something like that, 10:30. But again, they knew my whereabouts. And then when the money came up missing, I was in Western Maryland. There's no way I could have did it. They're like drats. They don't care about the truth, man. They just play their game out, and they're about trying to be the next Elon Musk, wealthy person. That's in their mind. So again, I'm not telling you that if you have 2 Mercedes-Benzes and you live in a $40,000 house in the ghetto that you're necessarily a narcotics distributor, but history has told us. And again, you're not necessarily working for the Russians and all the other things that go with it. And again, that person, whoever they are, they're not innocent, even if they're a cop. Again, York County courthouse, sex ring, etc. Now, again, remember, they'll say, well, if you had God, you would be stronger than that. And again, these are the people doing it to you. I mean, that's how crazy the world is. So remember, when they invade the religions and the religions lose any power that would be of God and become, the anti-power of Satan. And again, when I explain it to you, I'm explaining Hashem speaking in the background. I'll speak to you about that in a second. Operation Midnight Climax. And again, maybe as a layperson, you don't understand it. I've done my best to explain it, which includes the use of narcotics. So they would not shy away from mixing GHB, LSD, some sort of, private sector sex drug. There are plenty. I told you for years that I knew the difference between my supplements, which may raise my testosterone and that type of thing, and what they were using. For some reason, Satan was able to keep GHB away from me, as far as me knowing what it was, as far as the effects sexually. Right. And again, their deep state psychology is going to project at you, well, he's admitting to having done something. That's a lie. Just like an investigator. If you're investigating something and you realize something about the criminal enterprise, it doesn't mean that you're engaged in the crime. But again, the deep state will continually project that. And that's why when that individual said, I used to work for CIA, they knew what I was doing. My coworkers knew. Now, the fatal mistake, whether he was honest or dishonest, was taking money from China. Never do that. But again, you see a scenario where they may have put him in a position where he would do that. Again, I said that about the elderly man in New Mexico, worked at the proving grounds or the atomic grounds or whatever it was. He was a scientist, and they harassed him until one day that he decided that he would work for the Venezuelans, and they were FBI, not Venezuelans. So again, they altered his psychology to do that and become that. They'll go to hell for it. Deep state was killing them. Classic case. In fact, his former boss may have ordered the hit. He went to the annual stakeout in FBI and said, get that MFer, while they were sharing drinks. So again, I'm usually pretty humble. But as that judge said about Wayne Ritchie, you may have sacrificed, a tremendous amount, I'm paraphrasing there, for national security. And I did. They'll tell you a different story because they wrote that story before anything happened. And most of it didn't happen. Bottom line is, I wish I never left Pennsylvania. This place is beautiful. I went out in the rain yesterday. I'm like, what did I leave for? But again, it was a psychological operation. I couldn't get it back to save my life. Now, there's another part to this. I know they've used direct energy on me because they would. Again, there's the idea of who these people are, what they've done, and what they do. So there are people out there in the spy world that can project. They have, some would call superpowers. I believe it's basic creationary capability to share thoughts that some people believe is, psychic, whatever it is. I believe that people are blocked from their capability to do that. Everybody should be a psychic. Again, and Christians will go, psychic, that's like evil, like incense on the ark. No, it's seer. It means you can see. And they've said, based upon who these people are, because we've been able to discover who a few of them are, is what they were kind of projecting. They're not going to lose. If they have to drug you, they'll drug you. They'll use whatever they need to do it. That's why they get paid the big money. So again, a basic idea would be kind of Weinstein coming after me because he had sex with me. These people, again, you have to understand what they're using against me is not lawful in any court of law. But the judge may be so afraid that they accept it if it were ever get there. Getting there is the next point. Right. So again, they are sexual criminals. They're adulterating the sexuality, and that's what would have happened to Rose if they could do it. Which might be why she went off into Mexico and why I didn't stay in Pennsylvania. I would have actually took a chance probably on Pittsburgh if I would have known that it wasn't as expensive. I couldn't even see it. I probably would have bought a house out here like when the downturn hit, because houses were probably so cheap here. Just wish I had the money to buy my own place, and that's them stopping that from happening. Because they know it's more difficult to effectuate the psychological torture and the psychological operation and the surreptitious drugging when somebody has their own home. And then other things start creaming up. You buy a dog, you have a couple dogs around the place, right? So life changes. Again, these are heavy hitters. They were going to take Rose McGowan and destroy her. Anne Heck may have been a victim. The message went out to Hollywood. You may have won with Weinstein, but we're still winning, and she's gone. Anybody that speaks about it will be next. Because Spielberg may have been a Weinstein. I don't know. We don't know. I had no idea that Gates had a crazy side. And Microsoft, because you think they're the PR, that the deep state is also a PR firm for their members. So they'll kill anybody that tries to ruin the credibility of one of their members, which again is one of their faults. Again, I think he may have corrected a little bit, but well, because they reveal who they're protecting. So what they do is then they skew it, so you don't know who. They'll just protect people that aren't part of it. I mean, it's deep, man. But like I said, I am psychic to a certain degree, and it's amazing that I am at all, because they're always willing me not to be and trying to, screw that connection up and that realization up. And it always goes back to because he's grooming everybody. He's grooming us. I heard he told a police chief that he's grooming you for sex. No, to accept his sexuality with children. That's the kind of stuff that they're doing. So some of the cops were wise, but there's nothing they can do. So they throw the grooming term around. So when the cops kind of projected that when we have the groomers, we're not allowed to do anything. But you come along and you're the groomer because you're helping us with law enforcement assistance. And that's really kind of where they were with it. It's just using the word groomer out of place. So again, if they could get Rose McGowan to some place where there happen to be children, like you go to church, there's children. I don't touch anybody else's child. Never did, never will. You're lucky if I touch my children. Here, give me a kiss. This is your last kiss for the week. There'll be no touching around here. But I go to church after church. I'm like, what's that guy? That's not his kid. What are you touching that kid for? You can't say anything, but you go to churches and people will touch on other people's kids, and that's kind of one of the things I saw that knew that something was going on in church. And maybe that's their paranoia. Maybe that's why they work for the deep state. Right. But again, so I'm sure that wasn't that operation. But here's an example of what they do. Everybody will be touching on everybody's kid to set you up. And the first time you touch somebody's kid, somebody's there with a secret camera. They get a camera, you touching a kid, like giving a kid a hug or something, right? But I don't do that. Right. Never did, never will. So here's the scam. One of the scams, I said it before. So you go to church and you're feeling sexual all of a sudden. And you look around and this woman's giving you eyes. Right. So you see, everywhere you go is sexual, trying to alter you to believe that everybody is sexual. There's plenty of sex going on in courthouses all across this nation. Police departments, FBI, Marshal Service. Right. Again, consenting adults, fine, none of my business. But they'll operate you and try to get you, like, Jonathan Luna's girlfriend and I have no idea what happened there. I have no idea. Was he unfaithful to his wife? I have no idea. But they were friends, and they call her the girlfriend or something. Again, that could be just a disservice, kind of, to put crap on him. Right. Part of the psyop. But I really was interested. She got me interested. I don't know if she tried. Or I don't think it was a misunderstanding. Initially, at least. And she may have gotten cold feet. Right. I contacted her a couple times. And then the first time she says, he left a message, said, I'll get back to you. But meanwhile, I have her around me every so often. And I have her friends one's a U.S. attorney, and she's friends with the wife. And I was blocked from bringing it up to them because they're trying to present a certain psychology. And if I'm open with him about it, and actually Jonathan Luna was open about it, and then they tried to, and they killed him. Whatever it was. Even if it was suicide, it's still a murder when you consider it was CIA level technology. Whether it was CIA proper or not. I understand CIA was in the area and they were operating me. I know that part to be true. which would, again, investigatively, if we take a little bit of investigative license, we would say they're probably operating John also. And I finally, after I left the government, and this is the weird part, and they may have freaked out on it, I went to the gym, and there he is again. So he's being put before me. Again, it took him years to block me from the gym. So don't let them tell you, well, he finally stopped going to the gym. I think he's reacting to our investigation. Yeah, it's just, talk about, probably 20 years after starting to block me from the gym. That's the point of all this. It's went through several iterations of criminally intentioned investigators, private investigators, criminal enterprise members, sex traffickers, narcotics distributors, fraudsters, corrupt politicians, until finally I couldn't find a way to get back to Jim or the gym. So they're manipulating a person so they can say something that's not true. It looks like this, but it's not that. And sometimes it doesn't even look like it. So I said, what about, your wife's friend? And that was after John was dead. So again, anything was possible. Nothing made sense to me to a certain degree because I wasn't part of what they were doing, even like the person they were supposedly investigating. But again, it wasn't an investigation. It's an assassination. Death was the goal, at a minimum. Sorry, there was something I was going to say, but I kind of lost track. Hashem wanted me to speak about. That's okay. It doesn't. Maybe we'll get to it later. Next time, I think to fight that, I'm just going to say I'm going to speak about this later, and then that way it'll be on the record, on the audio, and then I can go back and look at it later, and then speak on it then, instead of just leaving it in the back of my mind. So the idea is that the deep state is much bigger, much more satanic, much more criminal than we would be led to believe. And that's part of their counter operation. Yeah, we may have done this, but we don't do that. And when we do that, because then they'll later to admit to doing that, it's because of this. Essentially, the gist of what Hashem was putting in my mind, maybe he wants me to get the pattern of idea, the pattern of thought for that. Even though something seems like this, and even though it is this, there's also that, the further truth, the higher truth. I'm almost positive Ann Heck was psychologically operated into that happening. And I think the coroner believes something happened. See, again, the coroners in Pennsylvania, right? Some coroners cooperate with the deep state, some don't. Some fight the deep state. The coroners here in Pennsylvania fought the deep state. At least in the Jonathan Luna case. So the coroner in LA, he laid out the case for innocent Ann Heck. Something the deep state would abhor. Ann Heck may have been psychologically operated into that happening. And she was taking, they always try to get you on some psychotropic medicine because they can excuse, in everybody's mind, if I say, well, this person was taking Ambien, this person was taking that, just like the DHS employee. Everybody's like, pills. But again, investigatively, if you investigate the deep state and their effects on people, deep state, Stressed her out. She couldn't sleep. Again, the deep state correlates with the deep states of mind, alpha, beta, delta waves. They're affecting those with knowledge, and that can cause you to need whatever pill it is that she was taking. So when I was all in pain the first time in Indianapolis, the doctor prescribed some Valium, and I take a razor blade and I go, and I get this little crumble piece. Deep state Satan hates me, man. Use that maybe for a couple weeks, and that's it. They hate me. See, when I grew up, my grandmother, that gambling thing, that kicks in every so often. And that means that my grandmother was so mad. Bubby was mad at my grandpa Sam. She remarried, and that was a second husband. And she was mad at him because he would have these stacks of Liberty Bell racetrack gambling tickets. She would rage on it, and then go over to the refrigerator and take a swig off her quarter. That was her. This is Bubby's air conditioning in the summer, a quarter beer. It's Bubby air conditioning in Philly in the summer when you don't have a lot of money. A quarter beer. It also helped. She didn't have to take Valium. It's weird to see your Bubby swinging on a quart. So that whole mindset hits me every so often, So the idea, again, not so much before my wife ended up on pills, and I believe that was a deep state plan. So she ends up on prescription pills, and she's it's just, I couldn't control her. It was horrible. And I think after that was it. I had a different kind of thought on it. Again, of course, at that point, it looks to be institutionalized. What stocks do you hold? Are you willing people on medicine with your money and your wealth? Hedging against the people. Hedging that they would need medication. Again, that's in the thought process of the deep state when they make people sick. Well, we're vested in this anyway. Right? We got pharmaceutical stock. And I credit both Joe Biden and Donald Trump with, again, bipartisan, reducing the price and cost of medication. They both have worked towards that. We should acknowledge bipartisan effort, because you can inspire Democrats to do something similar. Because if they find out it's Trump, well, they won't go near it. Right. Again, that's part of the psychological warfare coming against our nation and coming against our government. So that message to Hollywood came at the death of Han Het. You want the same thing, keep it up. Back in your deep state hole. And say nothing. And quite frankly, having been a victim of physical sex crime as a child and being a victim of government sex crime as an adult, I didn't get compensated at all. You people that get compensated and keep complaining. And it doesn't have to be the Epstein case. I understand. And there are some horrific cases out there, even worse, where people are killed, maimed, or kept in slavery for an extended period of time. So again, I understand the seriousness of some of this, but again, I'm not a big count your blessings person, because what the deep state will use count your blessings for is to just, you don't say anything because, you're blessed over here, buddy. I always told you I appreciated my health, so they went after my health also. Right. I tell you, when they took my health beyond a certain point, because they had been taking it, the whole thing changed. If you don't remember, if they won't let you remember, the whole thing changed when my health went down below a certain level. But also, originally my health went down a certain level when? 9/11. Right. My life and my health dropped. And then there was an up, right? Why? My health went back up. Is it only me? Probably not. There's probably other people experiencing the same thing. Could be the angels. The angels in the body. Try to fix something here. I'm going to have to go flying. All right. I might be offline. Actually, it looks like it's streaming still. All right. Stay peaceful. This might be my cue. Stay peaceful. Praise God in all that you do. Praise God.